The going on with normal life self has the unique ability to help regulate the nervous system. None of the other parts have that neurobiological capacity. And so as the normal life self within the Kristin collective consciousness gains a greater footing in reality, increases the window of tolerance she possesses, etc., moves forward through with exploring consciousness without fear, the more I'm capable of experiencing a choice in my direction of internal focus. For example, when people are visiting the family's home here, I usually avoid them because I never before had the capacity to say hello without my brain competing for their attention. And that was because attached parts were activated. And now I can say hello, completely authentically engage in that hello, and then switch my point of focus and walk away and do a completely separate and unrelated task. I couldn't do that before. Like neurobiologically, I couldn't make it happen. Living with a dissociative identity is intense. And so we have 5 survival things that were survival instincts, survival attributes, if you will, that manifested into parts of consciousness that developed their own consciousness. They're no longer just parts of my consciousness. They're parts of my being that possess their own consciousness. That's what it means to live with a dissociative identity. And so when parts are activated, depending on how much co-consciousness they possess with the going on with normal life self, the normal life self may disappear entirely, shutting down the prefrontal cortex and, frontal lobes, and limiting the ability to perceive reality objectively. It becomes subjective not just because of my own subconscious perceptions, but also because of the survival instinct that is manifested in my consciousness fully, aka fully fronting. And so when a part manifests externally, and that is what we call a dissociative switch, where I'm still functioning as this physical being, but the consciousness is no longer quote unquote me. I know, exploring consciousness is fun. We love this too. When there is a switch, when a specific need arises within my vicinity, when particular emotions are activated within me, when it becomes clear that a particular survival instinct is needed according to the unconscious, subconscious, automated motions of existence we all have within our being. Super lost my train of thought there. The emotions, the survival instincts that our subconscious feels are needed in the moment. That is when parts are activated. And it's not that parts are choosing to cause switches. That is what I was told originally, and that is not true. It may be true occasionally, but that's not the foundational, across the board basis, like assume that this is just the truth. That's not how it is. Parts are often just as baffled and bewildered at the switches as we are. And that's because the activations come from a depth of our being deeper than our parts. And those that unconscious body mind and those subconscious neural pathways are what cause those projections and those activations and such, according to the interpretation of stimuli and the related emotions associated with them that we may be experiencing, whether consciously aware of them or not. And so if my subconscious feels that my greatest survival need right now is proximity with other human beings and some kind of sense of safety that is dependent on such proximity, then my thoughts and my feelings and my body sensations and my desires and my impulses and even the memories I have access to are all going to be supporting that theory. The theory being, right now, for survival, you need proximity with people to feel safe. And to help you do that, we're going to activate everything within your being that's related to that. That's the way a dissociative identity functions. And so we all have the 5 survival instincts. Now, when we get PTSD as an adult, there's only 3 responses. Oh wait, I might be messing that up. I know we're dissociated. I want to make sure I share information as accurately as possible. So when we have PTSD so when we have PTSD in adulthood, it causes a dysregulated sympathetic nervous system, and that's associated with the fight, flight, and freeze parts of consciousness or survival instincts within our beings. Every human being, every creature in the wild has these survival instincts. How they manifest is just different, dependent on variables such as, are you a human being in a work office or are you a rabbit running in the woods? And so we all have these survival instincts. When you get PTSD, when you have trauma in adulthood, it activates your sympathetic nervous system. But when you have childhood trauma, you have 4 responses, survival responses, instead of just 3 that are associated with your nervous system. And you have 5 responses instead of just 3 altogether. So the 5 altogether are the fight, flight, freeze. We got those ones, right? And then submit and attach. And then the submit or fawn is the 4th one that's part of nervous system dysregulation. And so we all have these survival instincts in us, but when you're living in a fragmented consciousness, those survival instincts don't have contact with all the other information within the consciousness. The survival instincts driving for attach, for physical proximity with people, don't have information that other parts over here, fighting or fleeing, might have. And their whole wiring, their whole encoding is different and separate. Not just different, it's separate. Everybody has these different things, but they're all intertwined. They're all integrated. And therefore, the attached parts has relationships with all these other parts of consciousness that bring balance to the attached part. And that's where you get mature and healthy-brained, mentally intact, sane people. Like those even exist. We all have unique consciousness, and it's time we just start accepting that we're all just different, and that's beautiful. So we all have different consciousness. We all have these survival instincts. When living with a dissociative identity, these survival instincts manifest as completely separate parts of consciousness. They're not just one part of my consciousness. That's one integrated singular consciousness I'm living in. Rather, the consciousness within my being is a collection of consciousnesses. A collection of different consciousness is each with their own thoughts, feelings, personality traits, unique, distinct physical manifestations such as physical posture and the pace at which you walk, or the way that you extend your feet where you walk. For example, some of my parts walk with their toes turned in. I walk with my toes really turned out, and it's a really obvious way to tell I'm in a different part of my brain, even if other things don't feel super different. And so when living with a dissociative identity, our subconscious is constantly activating parts according to what it thinks we need to survive. And until we retrain it, it's going to keep doing these automated activations. And so one thing I learned shortly after being diagnosed with DID in 2017 is that every little teeny tiny thing activated parts. Everything. Flavors, taste, textures, sights, sounds, emotions, people, entertainment, everything. I couldn't watch TV shows without dissociating. I couldn't eat food without dissociating. I couldn't see people without dissociating. And so with my brilliant brain, I started to try to analyze the problems of my brain to create solutions for my brain with my brain. And I realized that if every little thing is activating my subconscious parts and causing me immense chaos beyond my control, then that means there is opportunity to intentionally activate in order to bring balance to the system. And so I dedicated my life, beginning a little over a year ago, to figuring out my consciousness and finding creative ways to cope. And everything I set out to do, I accomplished, and more. It's pretty wildly phenomenal to reflect on all that has transpired and unfolded in the past year and a half. Truly magical, truly miraculous, truly marvelous, truly wonder-filled, truly, wild. It's wild. It's a trip. It's very trippy. We all have different ways of describing it. So, 11/11. Yeah, 11/11. Make a wish. Mwah. Make a wish. I made a wish. I made a wish too. I know, I love you too, Ocean. So I noticed that everything was causing activations. And I said, if everything is happening beyond my control, then what if I just brought it within my awareness and control and used it to my advantage? Because clearly my consciousness is very sensitive. And what if that doesn't have to be a negative thing? What if I can use this as a superpower somehow? And so everything that was causing dissociation, I now have used to create coping tools. Food, sights, sounds, people, tastes, textures, every single teeny, tiny, minuscule thing that has ever been a trigger is now something I use to reclaim my power on a daily basis. It is marvelously miraculous. A dissociative identity, our whole subconscious is functioning as if it's inside out, where all of the subconscious happenings are happening outside within our personality states and within our states of consciousness that manifest as personalities and identities. And it is profoundly beautiful when we can get past the fear. And so we, as people living with dissociative identities, as well as we, people, I know, right? All the people, those people who do not live with a dissociative identity, and maybe it can be a little scary because it's really just confusing and disorienting and really just doesn't make sense. And just because it's so out of the paradigm, it's scary. And so it's time that we get past the fear as a world, like as a human species living on planet Earth. It is time that we break past the fear and explore the profound beauty of multi-conscious minds. Mosaic minds are literally the human consciousness attempting to evolve. And the more that we can embrace that and guide that evolution, the more we as a human species can benefit. All of humankind can benefit from those living with a dissociative identity. Let me repeat that. All of humankind, every single human being that has ever existed, that exists right now on planet Earth, and that will continue existing in years yet to come, every single human being can benefit from those living with dissociative identities, because of the secrets and the treasures that our consciousness holds. It's profoundly beautiful, and I'm so excited to explore it with you all. My brave, beautiful warriors, soul friends. Thank you so much for joining the Kristin Chronicles healing journey, a magical and miraculous healing journey of personal growth, self-discovery, and personal power. reclamation. Namaste, my soul friends. The light in me sees the light in you. The truth in me sees the truth in you. The beauty in me sees the beauty in you. I honor you. Sat Nam.